Hi, I'm Jim. Welcome to the Unbound Performance Podcast, where we explore the world of sports and performance mindset training.
And I'm Caroline. Each week, we talk about the strategies, habits, and mental framework that help us to excel. Let's get into today's episode.
Youth sports, here we go.
It's been a popular subject that every time I talk to a mom friend about what we're doing, they're like, oh my God, please talk about youth sports. And not just they don't just mean talk about youth sports. They mean talk about the level at which kids are playing sports, the cost, the time, the emotions, the pressure, the everything about youth sports.
Yeah, depending on the age of the participant, they all have their pressures. Probably only gets worse as they get older. I remember playing, baseball and football as a young kid, and I had my own psychological issues with pressure, and those all self-imposed, and I did not handle it well, particularly in baseball. There's a lot of times
it was all self-imposed. You don't feel like your parents
not a bit.
Oh, okay.
They were perfect sports parents. They'd come, clap, good job.
Same.
You got to cut the grass when you get home. Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Cutting grass, I hated that. But no expectations, zero pressure. It was all from me, where I thought I had to be ultimately capable performer, and really sucked all the fun out of it for myself, especially not during the day when we were just playing with our friends, but at night when I was in a uniform under lights with people watching.
So I was going to say, were you that way in all aspects of life, or just in sports? Or competition,
sports,
or what did that look like?
I didn't care, my grades or whatever. I couldn't cared less.
I wasn't a bad student, but I was not desiring to have straight A's.
I remember even I was in some high IQ program in high school, and my grades were still nothing, because I just didn't want to flunk out of high school.
Right.
And so my parents would, my mom particularly, would crack jokes, trying to motivate me in some way. I just didn't even matter. So no, it was, I can't imagine what I would have done in today's
environment
world. I would have crumbled, because I wound up kind of pulling up out of it when I got to 11 or so. But it was all based on anger.
Pulling up out of that mindset?
Yeah, where I was so, in baseball particularly, I was so afraid to fail that I was paralyzed with it.
And failing a strikeout kind of failing?
Yeah. And so for a while there, I was just the kid that got put in right field and got one at bat and they walked or strike out, because I couldn't even swing the bat. And, my friends would be asking me, what's wrong with you? Because during the day, everything was fine,
right.
And I was so frustrated and angry, and I didn't know how to deal with it at all, and was so embarrassed. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. So I just kind of, I don't know, I think something just snapped where I got so mad that I just said, the heck with it. And I kept playing, but I wound up doing okay after that. But yeah, when today's world where you're trying out for, we had tryouts, but I think maybe we're going to be automatically in some team. I don't know. I can't really remember feeling tryout pressure.
It was so long ago.
That was good. Yeah, it was quite a while. So, I don't really remember that. But now you've got, it's my son still plays rec sports. So, they have an evaluation thing just so we can make even teams sort of.
Right.
But nobody
is. So they can make even teams.
Correct. In theory.
Right.
But nobody is going to show up at those and then not make a team.
Right.
Whereas,
which team are you going to be on?
Yeah. And it's not a ranked, you really threw that ball well, the 2 chances you got to throw the ball in this evaluation, so you're going to be on the A team.
Right.
There's none of that.
Yeah, and there's no feedback. It's just,
right.
Congrats, you made a team.
And heck, sometimes people are trying to help the kids throw better, whatever, during the situation. But, now you've got 8-year-olds trying out for travel teams, and you're either going to be on the A team, the B team, the C team. I can't imagine, or no team at all. I can't imagine, although I think
most have it set up. There's enough levels.
Because for every kid you cut, you're losing money. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have.
There's so many facets of this conversation.
It's just unbelievable. We could talk for days
on
all of this. Well, and it may be a situation where we've got
a series of subject matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think probably at the top of our list in terms of interest is the like psychological impact it has on kids and their parents,
Sure.
and the whole process of it. And when that starts at, I mean, I remember I had players that I coached in baseball. And years later, they've got a young kid. He's 8 or 9. I get a call. Do you think we should put him in a travel thing? And their motivation primarily was, well, what if he doesn't make the junior high team? Because he hasn't played enough competitive baseball at an earlier age. And, so it wasn't necessarily about trying to make it in Major League Baseball, but it was.
Right.
And I remember saying, like, I've seen enough junior high baseball that if he's not making it, it's not because you didn't play travel.
Right.
That's just it. But they did have a limited travel. He went ahead and did it, and it was a miserable experience. And it was very limited compared to what it can be.
Right.
And I know for us, as soon as our son started kid pitch, which was age 9, we had travel people. Now's the perfect time. Now's the perfect time. Yeah. And I'm lucky.
I never really thought that they were like recruiters for the travel.
Oh, they would be at our games. I mean, not just our games,
right?
But,
yeah.
And some of them were coaching a rec team too. But I know
surely there was a motive.
Yeah, and it's to identify kids that we could. Yeah. You need to come play for us. And I'm not trying to paint everyone in travel sports. No. I mean, I would in travel sports for 20 plus years, still have connections in that, still work in that area. But you just have to be aware of, rather than just automatically trust what someone says. Like for me, I had 2 or 3 different travel coaches. Now's the perfect time at age 9. Well, I was aware enough, like in my mind, I'm thinking like, no, it's not.
Right.
Like, and so
he
plays rec baseball in the fall and the spring, rec basketball in the winter. Both kids are taekwondo all year long. It's just multiple. For a while he would play rec baseball and soccer in the same season, fall and spring. And daughter plays multiple sports or middle school. And that's just it. But we haven't jumped on that train.
Yeah.
Mostly because we know once you jump on it,
you ain't getting off.
It's hard
to
get off.
It's ugly.
Yeah. And so that's, but so many people feel pressure to, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. And we are, I mean, even though like our son's birthday isn't ideal, because that's the other thing, like they've done studies where like depending on when your birthday is, then you're in an advantage age-wise.
What's the advantage No, don't tell people. Never mind. When's John's birthday?
It's December, so he's a late birthday, so he's always young.
Yeah.
So, they've done, Malcolm Gladwell did a whole thing on it, with hockey players, and how if you had the right birthday, then you were older, you're much more apt to make all-star teams, make higher level teams, because you're physically more mature, and it just keeps going.
Okay.
So
suggesting there's a correlation to this.
Oh, for sure. Huge. Yeah.
Okay.
Like he did a whole thing on it. So, I mean, we've lucked out with our son is genetically
huge.
It's like engineered laboratory. He's just massive and super strong. But, that's where people make decisions like, well, we're going to hold him back in school a year, and at some point
reclassify.
Yeah, for boys, I mean, that happens regularly. And there's just so many aspects to this, but I think from a psychologically healthy approach to this, I mean, one, if you're thinking about college and playing in college when they're 8 and 9, you just have no idea. Like, one, the numbers, like, I mean, what is it? I've heard 1% to 2% roughly will get some kind of athletic grant money to play a college sport.
And that's just great money. It's not like full ride. You won. It's
absolutely
just some sort of
And the rules have changed now, like very recently within the last week or so, in terms of how they're going to address scholarships, particularly Division I, they had that lawsuit. So there was settlement up out of court. But what that's going to mean in terms of colleges directly paying student athletes, that may be a situation where some of the what they would call Olympic sports or non-revenue sports become club sports. I mean, I know plenty of coaches at that level who coach those kind of sports, and they're wondering like, what's this going to look like in 5 years? But for now, like, I'll just keep using baseball. Baseball, a fully funded Division I program has been up to now 11.7 scholarships, and you may have 40 kids on the team.
Right.
Think of the money you spend in travel baseball. $15,000 a year,
at least,
easy.
Yeah.
If you're paying that in, thinking you're going to get reimbursed somehow, that is that's better off just putting it in some kind of bank account or whatever.
Yeah.
All the
make something off it.
Yeah. But and the pressure of dealing with identity and self-worth, confidence, when you're 8 or 9 and you're told, well, you're not good enough to be on the 1 team, you're good enough to be on the 3 team. That's a lot. And then you've got parents who maybe are have an unhealthy identification with them, living through their kid or whatever. You hear that, that's cliche. I think most parents involved, I mean, the ones that show up on some video on X or Instagram or whatever, but most parents aren't like that.
Right.
Most parents are trying to figure out how they can create or find the best possible
environment for their kid.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
And don't want to feel like they're being left behind. There'll be kind of an innate trust in coaches and administrators in these travel programs.
It's like the difficulty too, though, for these parents who do just want a normal environment for their kids. They recognize that competitive sports is good for them,
right?
Socially, all those things. But it's like just the fact that parents have to go blindly navigate this and try something and switch it up and try something and switch it up and have to hear all the noise about what's going on. And my brother-in-law went from like, we're not playing travel baseball to creating their own travel baseball team. And now the kid's got, a bag full of 3 different bats and he's 8 or 9.
Those bats aren't cheap either.
Well, that's the other thing is a friend of mine who was the first to actually mention that she would love us to talk about youth sports. It was like her son just loves baseball. She's like, he could play baseball all day long. So we're going to put him on just a rec team. And she's like, and then we figured we'd, get him his own helmet because they just had to have a bag of stuff out there. And she's like, I went to Dick's just to get the kid a helmet, $80, $90 for a 7-year-old that's going to last him 1 season, let alone the bat, the bag, the shoes, like everything else. And she's like, this is for rec league. And maybe it was just that they needed to have their own helmet. So she figured she would just go buy him a new one. But like, that was not even a scenario where they were trying to get him at some high level. That was just like the basic necessities to be on rec baseball. Like, other impacts aside, the parents who struggle to go drop $100 at Dick's, they're not going to tell their kid no. We said we'd sign you up for baseball. So it's like, it's this trickle effect that just multiplies so hard from the parents, the kids. I mean, I would say the siblings that aren't doing that either get dragged along or left at home. It's like,
it's like you better pick soccer or basketball. Those because then all you got to do is buy sneakers, which they can cost a fortune.
That's very true.
In basketball, but sports like
hockey,
baseball or lacrosse or hockey, holy cow! That's how often do you have to get new equipment
right.
as they keep growing.
Yep.
You drop $500 on
easy
a bat, and 2 years later, I need a new bat,
different one.
And I was listening to a podcast, the Gold Medal Squared volleyball. It's called Coach Your Brains Out. And one of them, he's a coach, but he was in a situation where I think he was 10 at the time, but playing on an 11U volleyball team, and they had a tournament in Southern California. Grandparents came, he came, and he started talking about the cost. Like, it cost us $20 to park.
Yep.
It cost each of us $20 to get in. You're looking at almost $200 for our family.
And by the way, most of them won't let you bring outside food in.
Right. Yeah. Also very true. Just to watch their kid, and then of course volleyball when you're 11 and you're playing on the same size court as the women's national team. Net'll be 4 inches lower. But other than that, it's the same size court.
Yeah.
Same rules in theory, in general. And it is a serving contest.
Right.
Like
who can get over the net?
Shank, ace, shank. You're not even getting exercise.
No.
Like if you compare it
you might get your heart rate up during warm-ups.
Right. compare it to like soccer, for instance.
Sure. At least they're
They're
running.
running around,
Right.
and then generally when kids are first starting out, like I know my son, he played soccer when he was 5 or 6. It was different.
Yeah.
Smaller field, fewer kids on the field, and then as you get older, the more kids added, the field gets bigger. Things like that. With volleyball, there's none of that kind of thing. And
that's true. I never really thought about that.
So it was interesting. He was, from a parent standpoint, very frustrated watching.
As he should be.
Yeah. And, not every, like I know, when our son started playing baseball, it was off the tee or the coach pitch. If you could hit the coach pitch,
sure.
Great. If not, you just hit off the tee. And the field's smaller.
Yep. And much.
Yeah. And then it gets bigger as they get bigger.
Right.
But it's, I don't know. There are tough waters to navigate. And never mind if you're trying to figure out the best way to put your kid in the best possible situation. I know I talk with parents of older kids who those pressures are like when they're paying to play club volleyball. Playing in college is a huge part of
100%
that process, and that's why so many of these organizations exist.
Yep.
And they have tremendous trust placed in the people that are running the show.
Yeah.
And the girl was just like, the girl was feeling like she had had enough. Like she was not 18 or 19 or 20, she was 15.
Right.
But the pressure of recruiting and who's watching, and I can't take a day off, and what that does to their bodies. I still remember talking to Denise Correlate, who is associate head coach at Stanford, genius coach, Hall of Famer, and multiple Halls of Fame. And she told me, and I bet this is at least 15 years ago, that the kids they get every year are damaged goods.
Oh physically. Yeah, you told me this. Yeah.
And they're just so beat up. Like, keep using volleyball as an example. Like every tournament, it's sport court on top of concrete. And then you'll play the minimum 2 days worth of volleyball.
Yeah.
It's not just one match a day.
Right.
Never mind if you go to a qualifier, you're playing 4 days worth, 3 matches.
I was gonna say you're probably playing at least 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah, you don't know what'll happen on the last day, but the 3 leading up to it are 3 a day. If you're someone who doesn't come off the court, you're jumping and landing on concrete, multiple times. It's just my foot.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was him at the door.
I was getting so wound up. I know, it's so intense. And that's just how it is. Yeah. And never mind if you look at travel baseball, how many games a day do they play?
Yep.
In a weekend? Like, they may play 7 or 8 games over a course of 2 days.
Yeah.
And then, I know there are kids on our son's rec baseball team. They're also playing travel, trying to monitor the number of pitches.
Right.
I saw one kid, I don't know, he's small, definitely not old enough to be throwing breaking pitches, and he was throwing a breaking ball repeatedly in a rec baseball game, and his dad's the coach. I was so shocked.
Yeah.
But then when you look at the number of Tommy John surgeries for 14 and 15-year-old boys.
Yeah. You think about the damaged goods thing. It's like, I remember when we went and watched Carolina and State play, and I saw those little trackers in the back of the girls' shorts, and I didn't know what they were. Like,
right.
When I was playing, sometimes taking more swings was your punishment for something. Not let's limit you on how hard you work. It was some form of physical punishment, whether it was bunny hopping up the steps or swinging 10 more times. Yeah, you beat your body up, let alone not just the impact of what. And I always, from the first time I think I was ever physically punished for something like a missed serve or something dumb, was how the hell is this fixing a missed serve? I'm already pissed off enough I missed the game losing, whatever the scenario is. Now you're going to physically beat me down before practice or early the next morning as a punishment, and then we're not even going to practice that skill and practice that day or whatever it is. I always recognize this is dumb. But then you also think through the aftermath, whether you get to college and you're done playing or you decide as a sophomore in high school you're done. When your mindset is train every day, train to be elite, train the hardest, eat the food, do the workouts. It's hard to unwind that to think, okay, I don't need to train like an athlete anymore. If you're not playing competitive sports, do you need to go do that type of exercise or discipline every single day, or can you have a more normal fitness regimen or eating regimen? Like, it's just unwinding all of those things that are ingrained in you. And I didn't start till I was 15, and no one knew shit about shit as far as nutrition when I was playing. We would go to Applebee's pregame and they'd give us a $12 per diem, so we get 2 baskets of mozzarella fries and not call it a day. And no one said boo about it. So like, that was another thing, like unwinding that mindset of like, oh, I'm exercising so I can eat what I want. Well, if you're sitting on the bench, surprise, no, you can't. But just thinking through all of those little things that are ingrained in you of like, this is what you do to be great. This is what you do to be able to maybe be the best. And if you aren't, here's a punishment for it. Like unwinding that mindset when someone's always told you that if you fail, then X, Y, and Z will happen. Like, it's hard to unwind that and not always have that perfectionist mindset. I mean, I'm 12 years removed. Like, I think I'm just now figuring it out. And I didn't start till I was 14. I was late. I was a late bloomer as far as picking up my sport to have gone on to play college. So, and my parents were similar to yours. Like, they showed up. If I needed new shoes, they bought me new shoes. They were supportive. They cheered me on. If we won, great job. If we lost, that's okay. You don't want to play anymore? Cool. Like, they were just like yours, like the epitome of supportive sports parents. So whatever those other pressures were coming either from within or my teammates or coaches, like, imagine if that had been an extra 6 years for me, 8 years for me.
Well, I think that's where people get lured in, thinking, one, we have to start earlier, the travel thing. Two, if we don't, our kids won't make this team. When it comes to the whole youth sports thing, I think we have to make it abundantly clear to our kids and our parents that identity, worth,
right,
what's meaningful, what's valuable, you have to address it younger than ever. I mean, I know, like, someone started at your age, it's very easy to feel lesser than, inferior, whatever,
sure,
like you're not good enough or measuring up. It's almost impossible to manage that when a kid is 8 years old and trying to figure out how to be confident in a tryout setting. And I've never worked with someone that young on those kinds of issues. It's almost depressing that
that's even a thing.
you have to.
I mean, I would say it's hard at 14 or 15
No doubt.
to understand that setting and the environment and the player that you should be putting on display versus the one that you should be in practice versus the one you should be in a team versus the identity of being an athlete at all. Or, I mean, how do you even talk to an 8-year-old about your identity?
Right. I think you just have to really make sure they understand what's important. You're going to go, you have fun, you try hard, you be a good teammate, encourage others.
Yeah.
And then whatever they decide, they decide. You're more than a hockey player or a basketball player.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like that idea, like you said, of try your hardest, be a good teammate, be encouraging, work hard. I feel like, and now obviously this is a conversation that's going to have to take more time than just like on the way to tryouts.
Yes.
But talking through with your kid that if you do those things and you don't get chosen for that team, A, it doesn't mean that was the wrong thing to do, but B, maybe that's not a team you want to play for because their values don't align with yours or ours.
Yeah, not everyone is right when it comes to the tryout process. But I think also it starts sooner than that. Like, what message do we send our kids, say, around their grades? Our kids gets 100 on something, great job. We start hammering home the idea that outcomes matter more than everything else, instead of maybe promoting an idea of working really hard, do your best, and overemphasizing that. I know when our kids were younger, we really, like, to a fault, were very aware of not just high-fiving them when they got all A's or whatever, and instead talking about how proud we were of their effort and how hard they worked. But even then, like, I mean, our son started playing competitive sports very early. Our daughter just started when she got to middle school. But like the whole, like, they were in Taekwondo for, like, they were really young and still are. Even then, like, if they passed a belt test, didn't pass a belt test, to me, it's supposed to be hard. Yeah. And I don't want them to just...
Probably why you sign them up.
Yes, one of the reasons for sure. And it was an indictment on them as people or us as parents if they managed to fail a
Yeah.
belt test. The struggle that's where growth takes place. So you have to be good with the struggling process,
and how to be a parent and be supportive of that for your kid.
and
Like, I have
that's
no problem seeing my kids struggle. It hurts me to see them struggle, but it doesn't mean I want it to stop for them. That's an experience they need to have, and I don't like to see them sad when my daughter didn't get, was told she couldn't perform that one
right.
skill at the gymnastics meet yesterday. She was bummed because she wanted to give it a try and do her best. Also, and now maybe at 6, getting cut from something is not the experience I would have wanted for her. I don't think it's that serious yet, but at the same rate, there was a lesson to be taught there for her one way or the other, or for me as a parent, and I think, like you said, when you can focus on things other than successful outcomes in other aspects, it starts out much earlier than that. Like the whole good job for everything. When she brings home her folder with schoolwork every day with papers, if it says great job or if it says uh-oh on it, I kind of view it the same way. She's in kindergarten. Everything's going to be, every time there's a new subject, we've got, the kids take Spanish once a week. And the moms are all freaking out about the grades their kids got in the Spanish test. And I'm like, I didn't even know there was a Spanish test. I'm not worried about her Spanish fluency right now. This is the first time she's been exposed to it outside of counting to 5. And so a 50 on a Spanish test at kindergarten is not worrying me for her future. And if I make it seem that way to her, what am I teaching her?
Right. Just
for how to perceive her success.
Anxiety and things like that. And I think we would always, kind of latch onto like a comment that showed up on the report card or whatever about what a pleasure it was to have them in class.
Sure,
and
totally. We're so glad to see her making great progress. We're so proud of her.
Yeah. They were helpful to their classmates or their teacher, those kind of things, which really
are actually what's more important.
Yeah, they matter. I mean, our son, we was like 4 or whatever, playing rec basketball, where they changed the score back to 0 after every quarter. For every game, he would walk over to us and tell us, like, keep score. I want to know who wins. I mean, his mother and I are both very competitive.
Right.
That was just on his own. So he's always been pretty white hot competitive, but we try to manage that.
Well, I think that's the thing is we're not saying that being competitive is bad
no.
or that being great at sports at a young age is bad or that encouraging your child to do their best is bad. Like, none of that is being shut down. But you have to, the considerations and other support mechanisms that you have around if you're going to do this for your kid or if you're going to consider it, things to be thinking about.
Yeah, I
or
think
other potential impacts are great and should have great consideration taken upon them before you even dip your toes in that world.
The top thing, the kid has to be enjoying it. They have to have fun.
100%.
And that's how they'll keep doing it, for one. And they're not going to keep doing it if it's not fun. So I think that touches on coaching. Coaching, we better make sure that we're creating an environment where our kids are enjoying being there and we're teaching them so they can learn and improve. We can't get so wrapped up in, well, my kid's on the U12 top team in the region. It just means nothing.
Right.
Like if you look at who's on the U18 one team in the region, chances are it's going to be a completely different roster.
Right.
And
the same elite kids at 12 are not moving up the elite list until they're 18 and moving on to all get scholarships.
Yep. Some get bypassed physically. Some get burned out because they can't take this anymore. So resisting the urge to have kids specialize in one sport and play that all year long. I know they feel pressure to do that. And Susie or Tommy they're falling behind the other kids who do. Even like in other countries, when let's say soccer is that's the sport everybody plays and they play it all year long. Those organizations, they will still address different movement patterns, train in a way that they're not just taking the same action over and over and over and over. Like in a baseball, where you just throw. If you're a pitcher, it's just throw. And next thing you know, at 15, you're having Tommy John surgery. So avoid being driven by some notion of college scholarship, professional kind of
expectations.
Sport. That's the percentages of people who do that versus the numbers that are participating are ridiculous. But that being said, like I asked my son when he was 8, do you have any dreams? He said, yep, MLB. I said, great, go for it. I'm not big on limiting
Sure.
Yeah, the message shouldn't
But it
be
shouldn't be your idea.
correct. And I shouldn't be having, like, do you know what the odds are? Like, no.
Well, I think I told you recently about a friend they know someone whose son, I don't think he started kindergarten yet. He might be in kindergarten. And we all play the little summer $60 rec league at the church baseball field. It's actually on the soccer field. It's not even the baseball field. They just put some little, rubber mats out and call it the mom of this kid who doesn't play that league was complaining about having to drive 40 minutes to practice each week and the money they're spending on this stuff and that. And my friend was like, why don't you just come play with us? Like, it's super low key. Like, but the kids have fun. They learn some good skills and it's super cheap. It's right. If we can walk to get there. And then the mom was like, well, it's just not intense enough for him. Said that she's been and watched him play these games and he's the one in the outfield picking up wildflowers, not into it. But also, I think that's the thing. It's like for you, when John says, I want to play MLB, like you'll support his dreams and help him along the way as long as it seems within reason from your perspective as a parent. But for the parent of a 5-year-old to say it's not intense enough for
enough for who?
Or for him.
Right.
And I think that's where we get so caught up that, like, if you're going to play sports, you have to start early. And therefore, the parent needs to assess what level of elite activity your young kid's participating in. Like, every time I tell people where we go to gymnastics, they're like, oh, well, it only goes to level 6 there. And I'm like, what's level 6? Gymnastics, I guess, has X number of levels to get to the Olympic. I still don't know. But I guarantee you my kid's not even out of level 1 yet. And she's 6. So why am I telling people like, oh yeah, we go to gymnastics twice a week. It's an hour and a half and she has a great time. And people are like, oh, well, I don't care. It's convenient to the proximity of my home. I can afford it and her friends go there. So that's where we go. I feel like it's just this expectation that, like, if you're going to do it, well, then you better do it right. Who's defining what's right?
Well, and that's on so much of this. If you look at I go back to the U12 team versus the U18 team, the physical aspects of this, that if you're going to be on a U18 top national team in the country, physically, you're just going to be on certain metrics.
Sure, 100%.
I was just reading a book that came out called The Yankee Way, guy who was kind of overseeing scouting back in the 80s. He called up one of their scouts because he had recommended a player who was smaller. Basically told him, if you ever recommend another player this size again, you're fired. The line he said was, we want battleships, not U-boats. The first 3 characteristics they look for: size, strength, athletic ability, in that order. And that's baseball.
Yeah.
Never mind like football, basketball.
Sure.
There's a physical component. And I never tell kids to feel limited if they're not, the Hulk. But at the same time, from a parent standpoint, you need to have a firm sense of why you're doing this, why you're letting your kid do it.
Right.
And the odds, like in putting all this money in so they can get a scholarship, they're really against you. You're better off putting it in the bank. But the process of youth sports, I've been in sports my whole adult life. There's so many great things about it. Chance to be tested and challenged and to learn to work with other people and the pursuit of goals and learn the value of hard work. All of these things,
right.
They're really tough to learn outside of sports.
Totally.
So I think those are the reasons, your kid obviously having fun, those are the reasons you have them doing this. Feeling the pressure to keep up. Well, Sally, she gets 2 private lessons every week, at $100 a clip. My daughter's not doing that, then she's not going to be able to compete.
Right.
Meanwhile, Sally may quit playing the sport by the time she's 15 because she can't take it anymore. Trying to have a true sense of, it goes back to the first thing we ever talked about, which is purpose and meaning and value. Who do we want to become as a person?
Right.
And that's, the Dan Jansen quote was, if you become a better person through this journey, then you've won. That's how we have to look at youth sports. We want to have our kid around people like that, who care about their kids and want to help them develop and grow as people as well as athletes, who create an environment that is a good, positive, instructive environment. rather than feeling like we're in some rat race where
Right.
we're trying to climb over all the other rats to get to the cheese or whatever.
Well, and I can confidently say that a lot of my personality traits that I think are good were probably built from my experience with sports, but not because my parents put me in sports so that I could get those traits. They came as byproducts of the type of person my parents encouraged me to be as a teammate and as a player. And so they just inherently sort of became something that along the way I learned the skill of time management and of communication and, dealing with difficult teammates and people that you don't like or work well with and how to handle that. You go in that mindset of wanting your kid just to be a good person and to enjoy it, learn some good life skills. But the second we put that pressure on the best or the most elite or the top team or must win, because at a minimum, a lot of parents have just the must win, or we really hope you win today. Well, when you send your kid out to the field and say, good luck, we hope you win, well, then you immediately put that as the most important thing in their mind, especially to a young kid who doesn't have the wherewithal to say, well, I remember earlier they said we hope we have fun today, but you tell a 6 or 7-year-old, hope you win. That's all they're thinking about.
Well, and if they, like, for whatever reason, someone didn't make the game, how many points did you score? Did you win? Those are the two questions that get asked all the time.
Yeah.
How many
score
hits
a goal?
did you get? Yeah. And we teach them whether we're trying to or not.
Exactly. It's the unintentional.
Yeah. None of this is meant to suggest that working to be the best you can be is
a negative.
Of
course not.
No, you want to hopefully fall in love with this process of working. And I mean, reading The Score That Matters by Ryan Hawk and Brooks Cup. And he's a high school basketball coach. He talked about his son, who was, I think, 8 at the time, wanting to get up really early so they could go work out before they played. And it was his idea. And that's the way it's going to work.
Right.
If it's the kid's idea, something the kid wants to accomplish.
Right.
And they're having fun doing it. I mean, we're talking about playing games here.
100%.
It's supposed to be fun. I know Willie Stargell, Hall of Fame player with the Pirates, and he said there's a reason that the umpire says play ball instead of work ball at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that. I just thought that was brilliant. And that's what this is supposed to be. Now, that doesn't, I think anything you do, if you're doing it, it matters. You need to put everything you have into it, but it should be enjoyable.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about last week, which is if you pursue excellence and you go into this to learn skills and be the best you can be and have that mindset, then the winning and the success comes as a byproduct. It's not just, let's go in, let's go do the most intense team there is or whatever. Like, that's not going to lead to your kid being good at their sport or good at anything else that you're hoping for them to get out of it, for that matter. Like, putting them at the best or the most elite team or level or doesn't mean automatic success.
Right.
You could have a great kid who's a wildly talented athlete playing for the worst club in town and still succeed. You have a lot of these schools, I'm more familiar with volleyball, but you think through tons of kids that you're like, she plays where? Like for her high school versus where she's playing for club. And like, but she's still successful at school and the school's great and they have a good time. So I know you can come out very successful without having everyone or everything around you be at that. I'm kind of over the word elite today, to be honest, but like elite level. You can be a great product of your sport and be a super successful athlete and a great person and a great teammate, which I think is probably what we want to encourage our kids to be above all, without having the newest shoes and the bag full of bats. I don't know. I think through like the analogy you were giving earlier about asking kids like, well, did you win? Did you score any goals? Like, I became very aware of what we communicate to kids specifically when I had my own kids. I don't know where I came across this or if I just thought of it my own, but when every time you see a little girl and the first thing you say is, your dress is so pretty. You look so pretty today.
Yep.
Like, what are you teaching her?
Yep.
The first thing you say when you see her is, I love your dress. What are we teaching them? So that's a similar parallel to what you just said. And so it's like, we have to consider not just in the world of sports, how we communicate to our kids, but what with their smaller minds than we have, what are they receiving that we think we're delivering innocently, but how are they really taking it?
Well, that's like praising immutable characteristics,
Totally.
That's
Yep.
But you look around and look in our
Yeah.
It's not just our society, society in general. Like people are born into wealth, or they're
Yep.
born with very attractive, or
Sure.
born with great athletic ability, whatever it is, singing ability. If those are the things, the characteristics or qualities that we're praising, I remember talking in school about it. Nobody picks their friends based on like, well, they have a lot of money, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to
Right.
be their friend, or she's really pretty, I'm going to be her friend too. Like
Maybe at some
it's
awkward age we don't know better, but real life and friends, like you
that's
pick people who are loyal, who are gonna
right. Like you want to,
support you and be empathetic to your issues and be supportive of you when you need it.
that becomes, so that's what we should be thinking about when we're
Right.
talking about what really matters, what's
Right.
important. Those kind of qualities that can be developed, like
Yep.
character can be developed, as opposed to someone is genetically gifted in
Right.
whatever way it is, then that all of a sudden that value beyond, like it
Well,
does
and
not.
what about the person who is gifted with a beautiful singing voice, but they don't care about singing and they want to work really hard to get good at something else that they weren't born with inherent talent or something, and all we ever do is say, "But you're so good at singing." Like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
where are we limiting people on the things that they enjoy doing versus what might come easy to them or not? It's just something that's completely irrelevant to them as a person. So I really think that's where, and I think we're just scratching the surface of this today. As a parent, like what's the view of why you're doing what you're doing for your kid? What's the end goal? What do you want for the kid? I think you could, exercise wise go through what do you want out of this? What does your kid want out of this? What seems like something that you really want versus what you think other people think you should do? Like going through that exercise probably could be beneficial.
Yeah, I think kind of reflecting on why you're behaving in a certain way and
Yep.
why you're relating to your kid a certain way. I mean, I remember, it's been a while, but female athlete and was really good at her sport. Basically, the only way her dad related to her was through the sport, even though she was very
Killer.
talented and could have easily been a Division I scholarship athlete. She wound up stopping
Yeah.
playing. She didn't play in college because she
Negative
resented
association with
that
it.
whole thing, and
Yeah.
always keep going back to this idea of reflecting and establishing like your code for how you're going to
Yep.
live and what values you hold dear, and how that's going to touch everything you do. And that includes, in this case, parenting and dealing with those pressures. And they are real. I mean,
Yep.
it is so easy to fall for it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to put your trust in people who you think might be experts. And they may be saying, you really need to get in this program that I run. And
Right.
here's
Yeah.
how much it's going to cost.
Yep.
And we didn't have this when I was growing up, where people literally their living was full-time youth sport
Yep.
special coach,
Right.
and now, I mean, I make my living off
Right.
that. I don't know. That's not why I got into this.
Yeah.
And that's not why I ever got into coaching in the first place. I try to help provide perspective on all this. Some of the pressure is released from this whole process. And instead of feeling like you're letting your child down by not providing every last extra special, whatever it is, piece of equipment,
Yeah.
private lesson opportunity, elite level club opportunity. A friend of mine who used to always say that the club to avoid is the club that has the word elite in it. So there's plenty of fine people involved
Yeah.
in clubs that have that, but I thought that was
That's what you're
pretty
marketing.
funny.
Yeah.
We are looking around, we're comparing. It's so easy to fall into that. And if you like, you want to do the best for your kid,
Sure.
and provide them all the opportunities that they need.
Yeah.
And then it's all of a sudden you're the one who's pushing.
Right.
Maybe. I mean, I've had parents tell me, like, sometimes I don't know how hard to push. It's like, don't push.
Right. Just don't. Not at
Let
all.
them do it.
No.
Like,
Well, I think that's like you were saying just now. Instead of looking for the next best and greatest and next switch to make to bounce from here to there, taking the assessment of what do I want for my child out of this? What do I believe my child wants out of this? Are they getting all of that? And if they are, then like stay put.
yeah. But it's so, I mean,
But it's so easy to just.
I remember talking to a 7-16 level team. They were all really good. And I asked them why they were doing this. first answer was, well, to get a scholarship. Okay. And look, I understand but I don't think that can be why you're playing.
No,
at
100%.
all.
No.
Now, at the same time, I get that notion is what drives the proliferation of pay-to-play sports organizations all over the country, all over the hemisphere, whatever. You're foolish if you ignore that part of it, because people just go elsewhere. So I think you have to provide like quality training, quality coaching, whole 9 yards. But there still has to be a perspective, and you still have to be in this for the right reasons, and that's really developing the person that's involved. Yes. And
not an athlete.
That's what it goes back to their person first, athlete second, or third, or fourth, and you're not what you do. Like, you're Susie who plays the piano, who plays volleyball. You're not Susie, the piano player.
Right.
And those are two different things. And I think from a parenting standpoint, those qualities that we want to see develop in our children trump their performance outcomes every time. And that doesn't mean you're soft and you don't care about results or whatever. But if you raise children to be brave and good and empathetic and tough and resilient, those outcomes they'll be good. Like, you won't have to worry about performance outcomes. But if you're constantly applying pressure or putting them in situations where there's a tremendous amount of pressure to achieve certain outcomes, that quickly becomes not fun for the kid that's involved in this process. And that's not why we should be doing this. You have to be wary of those people who are involved, like that they're just putting the screws to your kid and nothing's ever enough and you need to pay more and we need to go to more,
train more,
travel event further away. All of a sudden it becomes a very exclusive list of people who can afford $15,000 a year, $20,000 a year after year after year to do all this. And just can't be that. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unbound Performance Podcast.
Your support helps us continue to build our community. If you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and share.